Hey there, it's Myrna, and I just wanted to share a story with you. Actually, it's the story of why I haven't shared my story. Just recently at the Home Business Academy event that I attended, I met some wonderful people, some totally awesome people actually, and some of these people I have known online for quite a while. I got to sit down with Jim Talbot and we got talking about telling our story and what our story was, and it was a great conversation. I'll put a link to the video under here as well. But basically our story was we didn't have a story. We didn't know how our story fitted into the world, I guess. And I get that. I don't feel that my story is any different to anyone else's. It's not a rags to riches story. It's not a great accomplishments story. It's nothing outstanding. I've always felt that I'm no different to everyone else. At the time I was going through my divorce and separation, a lot of people I knew were going through divorces and separations, so it wasn't a big deal to cope with that. Being a single mum hasn't been a big deal because everyone I know is a single mum, and when you can't kind of say that you're being an outstanding single mother when everyone else around you is a single mother. Being a working single mum is not a big deal because I knew a lot of working single mums. So I'm looking at my life thinking, where's the story in this? I haven't had to survive some disaster and I guess it depends on how you look at it. Hey, my eldest son was born 3 months early. It wasn't a disaster. I didn't see that as a story. It wasn't something that was amazing because in the hospital at that same time there were other babies there who were smaller than him. He was like 2 pounds 9 ounces. There were babies smaller than him. So it wasn't like that was anything outstanding. But anyway, apparently dealing with that is something that needs to be shared and talked about. And this is something I've come to realise, is that your story is really important. It may not seem like it is, but it is really important to someone out there. In my job, when I was helping disadvantaged people who were surviving domestic violence and drug abuse and just horrible situations and mental health issues, and they would share so much with me about themselves, and I used to say to them, you have to tell everyone this, people need to know what it's like to live with schizophrenia, what it's like to live with bipolar, how do you, what you're going through if you share that. And these people didn't think it was any big, not that it wasn't a big deal, but for them it was a struggle to survive anyway without sharing their story with someone else. So I just think it's really important that you share your story no matter what it is. My online story is really embarrassing and I don't want to share it, but I'm going to have to. When I started out, Andrea used to say to me, keep track of this, Myrna, this is all part of your story. And I started out with such a negative, cynical attitude. I didn't think my attitude was negative and cynical. Looking back on the transcripts of some of the emails and things that we have had, I can see that my headspace was so not in the right place. So it's pretty amazing that your story can really impact on others as well. So I just want to share with you just now, quickly, because this has gone for 4 minutes, just the different types of stories in case you're wondering what kind of story you might have. There is your normal rags to riches kind of story, but there's overcoming the monster, overcoming the villain, whatever that villain could be. There's a rebirth story, like It's a Wonderful Life, that story of renewal. Then there's a quest, you're going on a mission to do something, The Lord of the Rings. Then there's journey and return, transformation and homecoming kind of thing, The Wizard of Oz. They're kind of different stories. Then there's your tragedy or your comedy stories. There's always, let me tell you some more different types. There's personal discovery stories where you discover a lesson and you share that story and it shows how you're alike to other people, and this is how you attract your audience and your followers, and they can learn from your experience. There's illustrations and analogies. On the surface this has nothing to do with the topic, but the principle is relevant. There's success stories, there's failure stories. Everyone loves to hear people's failure stories and success stories. There's how I did it stories. These are practical stories of how I did, step by step, how I did this, this, and this. Biographies and autobiographies, your own story, that kind of thing. There's also yeah, I guess they're the main ones that sort of make sense to me. Some of the others I don't. So I've been doing a lot of research lately on stories because I wanted to sort of figure out what was my story and where did it fit in. I hope those kinds of that's been useful to you. Finally, just one last story. A gentleman shared the story of how he was down and out, and he wrote the story of his future. And because he was down and out and frustrated and things weren't going how he wanted, put it away and moved house. One day he moved house and he found the book he'd written it in, and he had read it again, and the things that he had written had come into place. He shared this story on stage, and another lady went home and she did the same thing. A few years later, she writes to him and says, "Thank you for sharing your story because it inspired me to write my own future story, and I have since created that." So there's power in stories. They inspire people and they get people motivated to take steps that they may not normally have taken. So share your story and don't revamp it. I've always thought, well, I need to make my story kind of a bit flashy or interesting or something, but it's my story. It's happened. It's a good story, and it will help someone somewhere. So I hope you found this useful. Let me know, send me a message or leave a comment below about your story and where I can read it as well. Thanks heaps.